where we're rolling the dough, simmering slow, stirring it up with a cup of love. Where there's sugar and spice, there's an apple pie in Sammy's Cottage Kitchen.
Hi, welcome to Sammy's Cottage Kitchen. Yes, I'm Sammy, and this is my cottage kitchen. And today, I'm going to teach you how to make an old-fashioned apple pie. Because we're in a cottage, just seems like something comfortable to do. Oh yeah, and it's raining out. Now, what I love to do on a rainy day is bake. So I think this is probably the best time to put an apple pie together. I have already measured 3 cups of flour into my bowl. I've got the fat sitting here. I've got butter, and I've got shortening. I've got a cutting board that has apples. Isn't that nice? I think that that's one of my favorite cutting boards. The first thing I'm going to do is turn it around to this side because I want to be able to cut the fat up into small pieces. Now I'm going to need a 1/2 cup of butter. The difference between my pie and some other people's pie is that I don't believe in just using the old-fashioned lard. But butter, let's face it, always tastes better. Now the butter has to be cold. I just took it out of the fridge because you're going to want to cut it into the flour. Now I've also got to put in a little bit of salt. Of course, I'm going to measure very well. About 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I guess that's the old-fashioned way too. Putting the butter into the flour now. But I'm also going to want some of the shortening. And that's also about 1/3 cup. Again, I want to do this fairly quickly because I want the fat to be cold when I'm putting it into the flour. If I find it takes a little too long to put the flour and the butter mixture together, then I put it into the fridge before I put the rest of the ingredients in. This is my fancy dancy garbage can that my husband made that has a flop-on lid. By the way, my husband made this whole kitchen, so kudos to Jack. Jack is not only my husband and partner in life, he's also my guitar player. And we have traveled, let me see, we've been doing this for about 32 years. We've been traveling around the world playing our music. Haven't really got that rich, you know, us musicians. We make a lot of friends, we make a lot of music, we get around and we enjoy. But you know, that is a different kind of rich. And I feel very rich to have those talents and to have a partner in life that takes me all over the place with it. I'm going to show you how this works. This is how you cut the butter and the lard into the flour. I will be babbling and telling all kinds of stories about my adventures with the music as well as with cooking. One of the reasons I chose for us to do an apple pie is, I would say about 20 years ago, not to date myself, we were in Europe. We toured all over Europe. We had the good opportunity of living in Holland, my husband being Dutch. We went there to help his dad. We thought we were staying for 6 weeks, and we stayed for almost 9 years. I love that. And the experiences that I had in Europe were musically and with food, it's unbelievable. We were moving from one town to another, and I didn't know anybody. And of course, being a good farm Saskatchewan girl, you know, you're used to just waving at everybody on the street and saying hi. I remember when we first moved here, and people would be waving at us as we were driving in the car. And my husband would say, "Do we know them? Do we know them?" Because he just wasn't used to it. Well, anyway, when we were living in Holland, I decided, well, they don't know about Canadian-style apple pies here. So I'm going to bake a Canadian-style apple pie. And I went around to the neighbors with cowgirl boots, an apron, and a little basket with pieces of apple pie and introduced myself. I'm not sure if they thought I was crazy, or they were just all polite, but I was very happy for it. Anyway, as you see, I'm babbling a lot about my musical direction and my cooking direction. What happened as well, I got to record when I was in Holland, and we recorded 3 albums while we were there. But then you had to figure out, how do I get airplay? So this was really a funny thing. I said to my husband, well, everybody seems to like that apple pie. I'm just going to bake a nice fresh apple pie, and I'm going to go to the radio stations. And I'm going to make sure it's nice and warm so it's aromatic as well. I can tell you right now that that pie could have won anybody over, and the music could have stunk and they would have played it. It was a big hit. So that was my marketing ploy. So that's my little point out to the musicians out there. Got to think outside the box sometimes. And what I'm doing today actually is not so much different. Although everybody in Canada is quite familiar with our Canadian apple pies, they don't always make them because there's a little bit of work. As you see, I'm cutting the butter and the fat into the flour. Very important to get it right. If you look inside the bowl, see, it's like pea size. It's wonderful. Now, there are machines for this, and you're certainly all welcome to use a machine when you want to. I like doing things by hand. It also makes it traditionally and really a nice old-fashioned pie. Well, I'm done with that part, so I've got some soapy water behind me here. And I'm going to make sure that I clean as I go, or else I'll have a pile of things. That's also a good habit. As we speak, I was talking about making the pie. We've recorded 7 albums to date. I've got a wonderful flour bin down here. And right now, my 7th album is out for pressing, and it's called Life's Kaleidoscope. I've had a lot of fun. I'm a singer-songwriter, so I write the songs. And I've taken about 2.5 years to do that album. But I'm hoping during this pie baking excursion that I'm going to get a chance to play a couple of those songs for you. So it's an introduction to that album. Right now, back to the pie. I've got some eggs here. I'm going to need egg yolk. And I have put a little bit of flour on my cutting board and on my rolling out board. Always, always take your eggs into a separate dish before you put it into the bowl that you're going to use, because you never know when something is wrong with that egg. You can never take that chance. The measurements, I'm not sure if I said the measurements, but the recipes are going to be on my website that I will give you as we go along, probably at the end of the show. I'm going to need some lemon juice. I've already measured out, if I find the right bowl, 1 tablespoon of vinegar. Now I've got an egg yolk, and a vinegar. And, oh yes, my fancy magic whisk over here. I love copper. It just makes me feel like it's a magic wand. I'm going to run the cold water from the tap because we have very good water here. You need icy cold water. So you're going to whisk this up. And I've got a cup here, and I'm going to get a 1/2 cup of cold water. Like I said, don't worry about me telling you the measurements, because I'll make sure that you get those recipes at your fingertips. I've got that whisked together. I need a fork, and I thought I had all my tools handy. But the good thing is, in a kitchen like this, everything is pretty much at your fingertips. So now you see I got a beautiful pea-sized fat pieces in the flour. If it's too fine and you don't have that, you're not going to get a flaky crust. I pride myself in a flaky crust. I put the other egg over here because I will need that for the egg wash for the top of the pie. Now, it's very particular not to overwork the dough because that also makes a tough dough. So you just very quickly put in your liquid and then you pull it together with a fork. Your hands are warm, so you're going to want to do as little as you can with handling the dough with your hand because it will melt the fats. See? Now I'm going to put a little more flour on my hand. And then I'm going to just take the dough like that together with my hand. And that's pretty much it. Do not overwork the dough. Very important. It's ready for rolling. I'm going to move a few tools so I have some room. I have a wonderful red. I like having really nice bright things to put the pie into. Actually, I should put the pie shell there. I'm looking pretty spinny right now. Spinning around in a circle. Isn't it nice to have it all handy? I bet you can smell that pie cooking already over there in TV land. Now, bring this back again. I'll show you the dough. It's nice. Now, you're just going to take it and tear it in about, you're going to take a good third of that. I made a little extra of the dough because at the end, I want to have enough dough left over to be able to make an extra pie shell. This dough also freezes beautifully. And there's nothing as handy as having a pie shell in the freezer to put a quick quiche together. Now I'll show you that on another version of the show because I'm going to put that pie shell into the freezer. Now I've got a sink here with soapy water and I have a cloth on my hip. There's a reason. I also wear a white apron because I'm probably the most infamous for wiping my hands on my apron, and with all the flour it starts looking pretty messy if I've got a dark apron. I'm going to keep a little more flour handy for when I'm rolling because you don't want it to stick. Also put a little bit on the rolling pin. This is not my grandmother's fancy, wooden rolling pin, but I like it. Now you start from the center of the dough, if you can see that, and you roll out and you flip it over. You take some of the flour off because you don't want too much, but you just don't want it to stick. Always going from the center of the dough. Like that. Feels good. It feels like a nice, tender, pliable dough. It's got to be able to move with you, but it's tender, so you got to be careful how you're flipping it around. It's still a little bit thick for my taste, so I'm just turn it around and dust off some of the excess flour. Hands are still your best tools as long as you've washed them. Don't ever be afraid to use your hands when you're cooking. There's all kinds of tools. Although I don't think there are many other tools than a rolling pin to roll out dough. Oh, that's not true. I was at the lake with my whole family. My brother had his 60th birthday, and we all went up on a fishing trip north of Meadow Lake, if you can imagine. And we had the most beautiful weather. It was crazy that it was such nice weather on the long weekend. Well, of course, they wanted me to make pie, because that seems to be a family tradition. And I said, okay, I'll make pie. And they didn't have a rolling pin, so I had to use a wine bottle. No, I didn't drink the wine first. I just, filled it with water. Somebody else did that job. And it worked perfectly. Cold water in a wine bottle. Now you'll see I took the dough and I've placed it gently into the pie pan. You see here, it doesn't quite reach. It doesn't matter. You're going to patch it up. But you take the fold out. See? Now, I'm going to take a sharp knife. I prefer a sharp knife for cutting the edges. I just had my knife. What did I do with it? Oh, this one will do. And I'm going to just cut around the edges. You're going to want a clean cut edge. Oh, by the way, those pies were awesome, the ones at the lake. I have a great picture of my two brothers fighting over who was digging in first. Whenever we have Thanksgiving, Easter, we still try to do our family gatherings. There are 7 of us, and happy to say that I have got a wonderful family. And when we get together, it's food and fun and a lot of laughing. We're sort of like a big Italian family, although I don't think there's any Italian. I never took the, what do you call that, DNA test though. Who knows? They told me it's French and German and Prussian and Irish, and wow, am I a good Canadian or what? Okay, here's the bottom shell. Now, found the knife, I hit it with my cloth, my cleaning cloth. But I need to clean that knife because I need it. It's really good to have, like I said, soapy water handy for this. I'm going to clean up the knife. Wow, it's really raining out. I can hear it splattering against the window. It's nice to be inside and doing something warm and making the house smell beautiful. Now I'm going to take another third of the crust, and I'm going to want to make the top crust so that everything's pre-prepared for when I'm putting the apples in. Again, you sort of just pull it together so it's in a circle like that. Aha. People ask, how did you ever get started with all the cooking? That's another story. Again, siblings, 7 of us, raised on a farm not far from Anaheim, somewhere near Humboldt, Saskatchewan. Large farm family. And we all had to have duties. You know, there was garden, there were barns, there were dusting, cleaning, cooking. Didn't like the dirt on my hands. Didn't much like that at all. And my mom, well, she was a good cook, but she didn't much like it. So when I said, I'd like to do the kitchen and start working in the kitchen, she was happy. So she taught me everything she knew. And then I started digging into recipe books and having a lot of fun with trying out things. We grew everything ourselves. We had all of the animals. We had an organic garden. Obviously, we didn't even know we had an organic garden, but we had an organic garden. So we learned how to make everything that we grew. I was always happy for that. Okay, as you see, I'm sprinkling a little bit of flour in here. Some of my main influences for cooking when I was younger was my Aunt Elaine, who babysat us in my early days, younger years, and she liked to make all kinds of funny things. So I learned from her. My mom, of course, and my grandma Beulah, who was on my dad's side. She's the one that has the Irish in her. All right, now you're going to see what I'm doing here with this pie shell. It needs breathing holes. This is the top. So I'm going to take this knife and cut like that, and like that, like 3 cuts. 2 here, and 1 there. So not only is it breathing holes, it looks nice. I'm going to take this and I'm going to set it aside. I'm going to cover it with a nice clean cloth. Now, I've got to kind of clean myself up a little bit with what I've got. Well, I'm just going to roll this roll. I've got a particular mat that I didn't even talk about here, but it really helps for not having such a tremendous mess. It's silicone. And I'm going to be rolling out the rest of the dough if I have a little bit of time at the end after putting the pie in the oven. So I'm just going to roll it to the side, right? And I'm going to set this bowl also to the side. And I'm going to put the pie shell over here too. I guess I can cover it with the same cloth. What was I thinking? It's a big cloth. Just to make sure doesn't dry out and all that. Then I'm going to quickly wipe down and get rid of anything that's in my way because we're going to get onto the apples. It's always a fun thing to make people smile. When somebody comes in the house and they smell that you've had a pie in the oven, they just walk in and go, "Oh, what are you making?" They always say when you're selling a house, you're supposed to either bake a pie or cookies because it makes people think with their noses. I've always been a little wary about that one, just in case. I have a nice little cutting board here. I like this cutting board. It's got apples. It's funny what I like the best about it is it doesn't slip. Like, it's got rubber edges like that. It's a wonderful cutting board. I've got apples. I have got lemon juice. I'm going to teach you all some knife skills. Nice trusty knife. I've got big knives too. I got all kinds of knives. It's good to have the right tools for the right job. Before I start with that, I'm going to do my mixture of sugar, cinnamon, and flour that you need to put between the apples. So I need 1 cup of white sugar. It's not diet food, by the way. I thought about that and I went, desserts are desserts. You just need, I'm putting 3 tablespoons, perfectly measured, of flour. And you're going to need cinnamon. I don't think I finished my last sentence. I'm infamous for that too. But it's good to have the mixture ready to go between the apples. I'm going to have 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. You don't want to put too much. Some people really like cinnamon and some people don't. And when you're making it for a group of people, if you're not planning to eat the whole pie yourself, then that's what you do. So now I've got this mixture, which is a beautiful cinnamon, sugar, and flour. Flour you need because you need something to bind the apples. I also need just about lost that one. I used to be a ball player. I think I've lost it. You're going to need some lemon juice because I don't want the apples to get brown while I'm preparing them to put them into the pie. So put this to the side. Now, you've got the apple peeler. Like I said, there are machines that do this sort of thing, but not necessarily it doesn't feel like it's really traditional when you do it that way. I'm going to need a dish for putting the shells in. Shells, what am I saying? The skins. What's fun about this is you can make fun out of it. As kids, again, you core and you peel and you slice these apples. But as kids, we were taught to, okay, let's see who can do this without breaking the skin. You got to go all the way around and try to get to the bottom. It's really still fun. I still do it with the grandkids. And, well, I'm going to see how good I am at it because otherwise I might need to practice on the other 5 or 6 apples. Depending on the size of the apples, you'll have to see how many you use. I usually put 6 out there ready to go. As you noticed, I'm just concentrating really hard because I want to win this battle with myself. Look at that. Woohoo! I'm almost to the end. I better not be bragging until I get there. Look at that. Voila! Now I put that in a separate bowl here. I also need to get a little strainer because I want to put some lemon juice in there. But there are seeds in lemons, so I don't want the seeds to get in. I think I mentioned it's really good to keep them from getting brown. But the other thing it's good for is lemon juice makes the flavor come out of the apples beautifully. Okay, I'm going to continue with peeling the apples. Let's see if I'm as good as I was with the first one. I doubt it because I wanted to go a little bit faster. This is where I'm supposed to be telling some more funny stories. I want to go back to our excursion in Europe where we were playing and making apple pies. Well, I hadn't been to Europe for a long time, and then last year I was invited to go for a tour, and I thought, wow, they want Grandma to go out there and play? I said to the promoter, how are you going to sell me? He says, well, I don't know, I should be okay. And I said, how about a Zoom and Boomer? And it worked. And I was so impressed with the audiences there because they were non-fickle. They were right there for me, front stage and center. The band was awesome, so I really enjoyed that. I did 4 major shows in Europe. But here's what's the kicker. The first thing people asked me, including the radio station dudes, is, are you still making those apple pies? I couldn't believe how many apple pies I had to make. When I was planning to go to Europe even, it was so funny because my friends, people I was staying with, that was their question. Are you going to make an apple pie? And I thought, oh my goodness, that just follows me around. I said, sure, all I need is a bike and a bed. And they said, well, only if you bake an apple pie. So that was my last July, I guess it was, excursion of being in Europe. I had a lot of fun with it. And when I was at the airport on my way, because I knew I was going to have to bake pies, they stopped to look in my carry-on luggage. And I thought, geez, I thought I packed very carefully. I'm pretty good at packing pretty carefully. This guy digs out this, I had about a bottle about this big and this fat of cinnamon in my bag. He said, why are you bringing this to Europe? I said, well, it's like this. When I was there years ago, I had to make all these apple pies, and they haven't forgotten, and they have never tasted Canadian apple pie. They have a different kind of apple pie, and it's delicious, but it's a thicker, like a really thicker dough. And more like a cake dough, I guess you might say. And so when I make this, it's a very thin and very crusty, crunchy dough. And he said, so do they not have cinnamon in Holland? I said, yeah, but they come in packages this big. Do you know? And they cost about $5, $6 each. Do you know how much cinnamon I'll have to buy? And it's going to break me, and I'm giving these pies away. The guy's trying to keep a straight face, of course. And of course, I bought that package of cinnamon at Winners or Home Sense or somewhere, and I think it was $2.99. Well, it baked all the pies I needed it to bake. And then I told the story, and he says, you do us proud, girl. You go over there and you show them our Canadian apple pies. So that was my experience. I thought for sure I was getting searched for something, but it was just my cinnamon. And it was legitimate questions, I think. I mean, when my son came to visit one time when we were living over there in Holland, the flour just isn't as nice either as our Canadian flour. So he brought 2, I think it was 10-pound bags or something like that of white cooking flour. I don't think I need this apple. I'm going to put it aside. And he got asked by the border people too, like, what are you doing? And he said, well, my mom's baking pies over there. So anyway, that's my crazy stories about my European experience and my apple pies. And it very quickly became known as the singing cook or the singing chef, and later the singing kook. I'm not sure if that's a compliment. Now you'll see I'm quartering these apples like this, because when you're doing it by hand, it's much easier to take. See, I've got a little knife like that. It's a good tool. It costs $10 if you can find it. It's called a turning knife. It's a special paring knife. And it's easy to take the cores out. One thing you do not want is to have a piece of skin or a piece of the core in your apple pie, because it's tough. And it just spoils it. So I'm particular. Of course, like I said, I've become very particular about my apple pie. The other thing I can tell you is, yes, you can have the traditional straightforward apple pie, or you can add berries. I've done that very much. Right now I'm growing honeyberries, Haskap berries, very Canadian, very strong, sturdy, and I guess what zone are we in, 2 or 4? I don't remember, for growing. But they don't freeze out and they're already ripe. So a couple days ago, my husband was getting hungry already for apple pie. I said, well, if you just wait, we're going to have it on Wednesday or on one of those days this week. And he says, no, I'd like to have one now. So I made it with the Haskap berries. So as you see, I'm just continuing to quarter. And I had these sitting in the lemon juice. Now I'm going to be slicing and putting them back into the lemon juice, because that's where you're going to get the most sense out of it. So there we go. I'm on to the last few. You're probably thinking, man, that's a lot of work. I don't know if I want to make an apple pie like that. Well, you don't have to. There are machines. I actually have one of them because I used to cater. I had a catering company for 11 years out in Okotoks, Alberta. I lived in Alberta after we came back from Europe. And I went to SAIT, and I got a 3-year chef's cooking course when I was in SAIT, so that was an awesome time when I was in Alberta. And I also had the good fortune, I'm just going to get rid of all that, of getting to experience a whole lot of different restaurants while I was in Europe. That was one of my greatest pleasures. I love to cook, and the people in Europe really respect their entertainments and their entertainers. So whether I was performing in Denmark or Sweden or Switzerland or Holland, Germany, France, couldn't speak the language, but I had a lot of sign language. So that worked out. They would welcome me into their kitchens. So I was a step ahead of the game before I ever went to the school, and that was great because I knew a lot of things ahead of time, but I needed papers, so I wanted to go for the paperwork. I really enjoyed Belgium was my favorite. It is, by the way, a lot of people believe that cooking, Europe's heart of the cooking culinary area is in France. It's not. It's Belgium. And I have had the best foods in Belgium, Switzerland, Denmark, but Belgium, I would like to say. Okay, now I'm going to show you some knife skills. I'm starting to say about the cutter. I keep cutting myself off. I told you I'm bad for that. When I was cooking for the catering company up to between 200 and 400 people, I had it's an apple coring and peeling machine that you latch onto the cupboard. And so, yeah, I'd make huge trays of apple crisps and pies and things like that, but I had to make a lot. So I wasn't doing this. So in case you don't want to do this, you can take your good magic kitchen machine, or you can take, your apple core peeler, or you can be silly and do it like me. Now, this is the lemon juice in this bowl. I'm going to put my brush away. And I'm going to teach you something about knife skills right now. If you do want to cut it with a knife, it's important to watch your little fingers because, that's all you've got. So when you take it like this, you put your knuckles here against the blade so that these fingers are never out. Never hold it like that. Always knuckles against. And when it's quartered like this, you got a flat side, right? So you do it like that. Now, this knife particularly, you can do it like that. And you try to get them as thin as you can. But you always keep the blade against your knuckle. So I'm going to continue to do this. It's going to take me about 3 to 4 minutes to get all these apples sliced. And meanwhile, you get a chance to listen to some music that is off of our brand new album. loves Cottage.
She's a hard-working woman, works like a man. She can clean up like a lady, but can't hide those hard-working hands. She's a nobody's baby, but if she's looking at you, oh, she's a hard-working lady, but she needs good loving too. She's looking away. She's looking away. When he's looking her way. He's looking away. Oh, she needs a lover like everyone, but it's the last time she'll get stung. She's not looking for maybe. So if she's looking at you, oh, she's looking for a man with hard-working hands and a strong heart too. He takes a chance, asks for a dance. Callous hands, they both feel at the hands of a hard-working woman and a hard-working man. And they danced, and they danced, and as they whirled around the floor, they made a plan to take a chance on two strong hearts and four hard-working hands. And they danced, and they danced, and as they whirled around that floor, they made a plan to take a chance on two strong hearts and four hard-working hands. She's a hard-working woman, works with her man, still cleans up like a lady with hard-working hands. And now she's somebody's baby, and he's somebody's too. Oh, she's a hard-working lady, and she's got good loving too. He loves his hard-working lady, and he's got good loving too. They made a good life with hard-working hands.
Voila! Didn't take very long at all, about 4 minutes. Thank you for listening to the song from our album, Hardworking Hands. It's a song I particularly have put out for the hardworking women in the communities. Everything from working in the barns and the fields and having jobs to coming back into the kitchen and feeding a family. That was the inspiration for the song. Now you'll see we have a whole bowl full of sliced apples with a little bit of lemon juice on them. I'm just going to remove the cutting board over to the sink, wash my hands again. I'm infamous for leaving my cloth somewhere, but I finally put one in my pocket. That's why they have pockets, I guess. Certainly isn't for a phone. Okay. Now I'm going to get the pie shell from over here. And you'll see I've got this mixture. It's the sugar, flour, and cinnamon mixture. Very important that you sprinkle it around the bottom of the pan. You're going to need I would say 3 tablespoons of that mixture. It coats the bottom. You won't, there's quite a bit of fat in the crust. Don't skimp on the fat. It's not diet food, like I said before. If you make the pie with too little fat because you're thinking, well, I want to be healthier, it's going to get tough, first of all, and the apple juices and all that will soak through. So you start with that, and then you're going to take about 1/3 of the apples and sprinkle them into the pie pan. Make a nice layer like that. Yeah, there we go. A lot of times, it's funny because I keep telling you about some of my music excursions. My mom will vouch for, and my sisters, that even when I was in the kitchen and I thought I was alone, I'd be using a whisk, you know, to pretend it was a microphone, and I'd be singing away like that. And they would catch me. Wasn't fun. They made fun of me. But they never made fun of the dessert or the things that came out of the kitchen. So that was fun. And the other thing they always accused me of was dirtying every dish in the house. But again, they didn't complain about eating it. So I just didn't let that get to me too bad. Now I put another layer with another layer of sugar and flour. And I'm going to put, this is a nice deep dish. And I only needed 5 apples, so they were like a medium size. It's hard to say whether it should be 5 or 6 or 4, depends on the apple. I've got beautiful apple trees outside that the caterpillars didn't get, and I'm hoping to use those for making a lot of pies this summer, for sure. Now, I'm going to top this with more sugar mixture. You're going to want to keep about a tablespoon, because after I paint the crust with an egg wash, I sprinkle the top with just a little bit of this mixture. It really makes the difference. Oh, I thought I was so smart and I had enough butter out here. Oh, I do. Smarter than I thought. Now, this is an old-fashioned thing, but I love it because it just gives that extra flavor. You just take little pieces of butter to put on the top of the pie. I don't know, 5 or 6 pieces, depending on the size again. I think it's the Irish in me that makes me want to always make biscuits and pies. I'm not sure. I think the French are pretty infamous for it too. I think I was hooped from the get-go. Now, I haven't made the egg wash yet, so I have to do another egg. Need a bowl. I have to separate it because, again, I only want the egg yolk. The egg white will make it tough. Need a big enough bowl to whisk it in, or I'm going to have a mess. And, oh yes, I have to rinse this off properly. And I'm going to need a little bit of cold water. About, just very little. About a tablespoon cold water. Just getting this ready, and I do need to get a little bit of cream out of my fridge. Coffee milk is fine. It's going to be part of the reason why it gets nice and golden brown. And again, about a tablespoon. I'll just leave it sit here. Whisk it up, have it ready, because I'm going to want to paint that pie crust as soon as I get the pie crust on the top. Love my magic wand. I do lots with my magic wand. Now I pre-prepared the pie shell, the top, if you remember from the beginning of the show. We're just about ready to pop this thing in the oven, so I think it's probably important for me to turn the oven on so I can set the temperature. I'm going to probably at 425. I'm going to set the temperature at about 425. And start. All right. Oven is preheating. Now you see I placed the pie shell it was quartered, and now I folded it out like I had it quartered like this, because you can fold it out nicely like that, and very carefully and gently you fold it out, and you're going to tuck it in, because when it cooks it tends to shrink just a tad, right? With a sharp knife, I'm going to cut the edges like that. Because you don't want it to tear, and it's very tender dough. And this little bit of dough that I'm saving that was already rolled out is going to go back into the bowl. If it doesn't land on the floor, it's not a good place for it. Because I'm going to use that for re-rolling and putting into that extra crust I was talking about that I would love to have for the quiche. We're going to freeze that crust. Now right now, this is very important. This doesn't just look pretty, it locks in the juices, so you're going to pinch. You put one thumb down like this, and you pinch. And another thumb down, and you pinch. And you pinch. And then you just keep turning the pie. And so one thumb, you put pressure down, and then you pinch with these two fingers like that. The thing about cooking and baking, don't do it unless you love it. Otherwise you just go to the store and you buy things. You've got to want, I'm going to put my fingers in here because otherwise it might stick to the crust, the sugar and the flour mixture. You got to want to cook. You want to have a love for it. You want to know that you're going to feel the aroma. So when you set out to do this, don't do it because you have to. Do it because you want to. The reason I say that is because that's going to give you the best product you've got. You're going to end up with a beautiful, beautiful product because you set some love in it. So now I'm going to paint with the egg wash that I made, like this. Paint the top of the crust. Do not paint the edges here. That's not going to do you any good. It'll just burn. But all around, just, you're painting the pie crust. That's what my granddaughter calls it. Let's paint the pie crust. Now, you could just paint it like that and it would come out quite nice with the egg wash. But this is the magic touch. You got to put a little sprinkle of the flour, sugar, and cinnamon. Again, not on the edges, but just on the pie itself. And the moisture will soak up the excess that you're putting on. You got to put enough. Don't put too much because otherwise it gets all floury. That gives it the crisp and final touch of the crust. So now it's ready to go in the oven. The oven isn't quite to heat, but it will be soon. There's usually a little bit of flour gets on the bottom of the pan, and I just make sure it's clean and wiped off. And you see, it's a beautiful pie, ready to go. I don't know about you guys, but I can smell it. So I'm just going to set it here until the oven is ready for it. Now I have time to pop that in the oven in about 5 minutes. And meanwhile, I'm just going to clear this path that I got because, well, baking isn't without a bit of a mess. Now I have an extra pie shell here. I don't need the lemon. I can put that over here. Pie pan, all right? And I left the roll-out mat handy. I can't do the bam thing because somebody already did that. Wait a minute, I just did it. Anyway, I see what my sisters meant about dirtying all the dishes in the house. It's looking kind of like I did that back here. Got a little bit of flour, put it on the board. You're going to do the same scenario. I'm going to pull together the dough, the little bit of the edges that you took off, like that. Do as little work with it as you can. Would have been not a bad idea to actually keep that dough in the fridge but you don't want to get too hard. So it depends how fast you make the pie and whatever, that's for sure. So now I got a rolling pin back here. Oh, I keep moving things and I don't even know why I'm doing that. I've got enough flour on the board. Now do you remember when I first talked about doing this? You start rolling the dough from the middle of the dough, always. You don't start on the edges. You're going to get flat edges and it'll tear when you start getting to the middle. So now you just take your time and roll. And while I'm doing this and getting this ready and getting ready to put the pie in the oven, I'd like to let you listen to a song off the CD. I've talked a lot about my husband and our partnership in the music, and most of the time he's back here helping with dishes, but he's a little camera shy today, so maybe he just doesn't like doing dishes anymore. I guess I get that. He said, "What? We got you a dishwasher. I don't have to do dishes anymore." I never had a dishwasher till this year, and my mom, who lived with us for years, said, "Why don't you get a dishwasher?" He said, "I am the dishwasher. The dishwasher's name is Jack." So that's pretty much it. I wrote a song while making a pie, and this is the truth, in the kitchen, and it's simply called Us. I'd like you to listen to that while I'm rolling this out.
When I saw you for the first time, I saw us. When I kissed your lips for the first time, I felt love. I felt fast and my heart fell hard, spiraling down, 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 free falling. Free falling. It was dark, I was scared. There you were to catch me there with open arms. That was it. That was us. You taught me how to love, and you taught me how to trust, and I learned how to hold on to the best of us. Through hopeless years and endless tears, life got hard, things got crazy, lines were crossed, life got hazy. I felt fast and my heart fell hard, spiraling down, 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 free falling, free falling. It was dark, I was scared. There you were to catch me there with open arms. That was it. You saved us. Life was not about waiting for the storm to pass. It was learning to dance in the rain.
And voila. There's the pie shell that is ready for the freezer. Just going to set that aside and cover it up until I have a chance to wrap it up. And the oven's ready. So I'm going to take this pie and I'm going to put it in the oven. It will have to bake for about, I would say, almost an hour. It needs to have 15 minutes at 425, and then I turn it down to 375 and bake it for another 40 minutes. It has to have a golden crust, but you want those apples to be simmered and be ready to go. So, just like magic, I'm going to show you the finished product in just a couple of minutes. I have to find my pot holders because I have a feeling that's going to be a little hot to touch. Are we ready for that final magic moment? Woohoo! That's magic. see what we've made. Can you smell that? Well, welcome to Sammy's Cottage Kitchen. Yeah, that's me. And I'm looking forward to cooking up something else on the next show. It'll be a surprise, but I suspect there'll be a quiche in it. And I'd like to know that you can contact me. I like giving private cooking lessons when people are interested. My number is area code 306-743-7514. And I have a website that I will have our CDs on and available also. The recipes, also some photography. We'll talk about that on another show. But the website is sammyrosehollenberg.com. Of course, www. Thank you very much for joining me today in Sammy's Cottage Kitchen.